Hey guys, this week on Cooking with Carby, we're not just listening to smooth jazz, we're making dynamite rolls. I'm by no means a master sushi chef, and some of these things may be non-traditional, but we're gonna get very close to the real thing, and the key is it's at home instead of picking up takeout. With a little bit of practice, you should be able to finish prepping this entire meal in the time it takes your rice to cook. So let's start with our rice. 2 cups of sushi rice, which is a Japanese short grain rice. Don't substitute with medium or long grain rice or you'll end up with different results. If you're not already in the habit of washing your rice, please make sure you do. Not only is your rice dirty, but this also rinses off extra starch on the outside of the grain that causes clumping when it cooks. Into my rice cooker goes those 2 cups of rice and 2 1/4 cups of water. Make sure your rice cooker is actually plugged in, and then we can move on to our prawns. I'm using frozen, raw, extra large prawns, but you can definitely use a different variety or shrimp instead. With this size, I'm only going to need 2 per roll. Because these were frozen, I thawed them in a bowl of cold water just until they're flexible enough for me to pull the shells off. I'm removing everything except for the tip of the tail. These are not called dynamite rolls because they're spicy, but actually because we're gonna leave that tail hanging out the end of the roll and it's gonna look like the fuse on a stick of dynamite. Now, to make the rolling process a lot easier down the line, we're going to skewer our prawns so that they cook in a straight line rather than curling up like they naturally want to. I'm going through one end of the shrimp and out through the tail. You should be able to fit 2 or 3 on here at a time. Next is a quick glaze for our prawns. You have a lot of freedom here. You could really season these in any way that you want with your favorite sauce, or optionally you could create a tempura batter and fry these instead. I'm going with a couple of tablespoons of oyster sauce, followed by a tablespoon of dark soy sauce and a few teaspoons of chili garlic for some spice. Give everything a good mix, and then we're going to move over to the stovetop where I already have a pan preheating. Lay all of the prawn skewers flat, and then we're going to brush them generously with the glaze we made, and then leave undisturbed for 1 to 2 minutes on this first side. Your cook time is going to be very dependent on the variety of shrimp or prawns that you're using. After the first side has gained a little bit of color, maybe a touch of char, flip to the other side, brush again with your glaze, and let cook for another 1 to 2 minutes until fully cooked. Once they are finished cooking, set them aside so that they can cool while we finish prepping our vegetables. You should be able to find nori sheets at pretty much any grocery store these days. I'm going to use them as a ruler for cutting my cucumber and green onions to length. After I've cut my cucumber to length, I'm going to split it down the middle, lay 1/2 down flat on the cutting board, and then slice it into rectangular planks no more than 1/2 centimeter in thickness. They should end up in strips like this. Follow the same process to measure off the correct amount of the green part of your green onions, and instead of slicing, we're actually just going to split them down one side. Lift it up, stick the point of your knife in with the dull part facing your hand, and just run it along. It should split down the middle like a ribbon and end up with a flat strip just like this. Rinse and repeat with the rest, and if you want to make it a little easier, you can use a smaller paring knife instead. Next are some radishes that are going to add extra crunch. I'm first squaring off the tops and the bottoms, slicing into planks, and then cutting these into thin strips about the width of a matchstick. Onto a fresh avocado. I'm first cutting along the circumference of it, feeling the pit in the middle, turning the 2 halves in opposite directions to split in half, using a spoon to scoop out the pit, and then using a spoon again to scoop out the flesh. If I rotate this around and use the bottom of the skin as my guide, I should be able to pull this all out in one piece like a weird scoop of avocado ice cream. Slice into thin strips, trying not to mush it into guacamole. By now your rice should have finished cooking. While it is still steaming hot, we're going to scoop it into a heat-proof bowl so that we can season it. Traditionally, this step is done in a flat-bottomed wooden bowl called a hangiri, but we're working with what we got. I'm using some store-bought sushi seasoning, but you can alternatively make your own by combining rice vinegar, sugar, and salt. For 2 cups of uncooked rice, which is 4 cups of cooked rice, we want 5 tablespoons of seasoning. Initially, the rice is going to be very wet, but by continuing to fold it back and forth, careful not to just mush all of the rice, it will absorb all of the liquid. Keep going until it does. Now we can start assembling. With nori sheets, one side is shiny and one side is not. On this camera, they definitely both look shiny. On this camera, you can maybe sort of tell. You'll definitely be able to tell when you have it yourself. Using tongs, I'm going to hold my nori sheet over heat for a few seconds per side, just until the edges start to curl. Toasting it like this is going to improve texture and wake up the flavor a little bit. I've also laid out my bamboo rolling sheet. These can be found on Amazon for pretty cheap or a couple of bucks at a grocery store. Place your nori sheet shiny side down and then start spreading your rice out. 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of rice should be plenty. We're spreading edge to edge, just leaving the last couple of centimeters on the far side open, as this is what's going to seal our roll. The first item in are the prawns, arranged so that a tail hangs out of either side and about a centimeter from the close edge of our nori sheet, followed by a strip of cucumber pressed tightly against our prawns, and then a row of our radishes. Now we can add in 1 strip of our green onions, and as many avocado pieces as it takes to get from one end to the other. This is what the spacing should look like before we start rolling. The first step of our rolling process is to take the empty part of our rolling sheet and pull it all the way over top of our ingredients, pressing down on the rice and then using our fingers to pull back on the ingredients, pressing down from one side to the other side, then lifting that flat portion up, moving it forward and pressing down and tightening our ingredients again. Lifting up again, moving another centimeter, pressing down, and tightening all of our ingredients from side to side. We're going to keep doing the same process over and over again, 1 centimeter at a time, meticulously, until we have no more bamboo mat remaining underneath our roll. Once we reach that point, we are going to complete 1 more roll with an open hand this time to remove the mat from our roll. You should end up with a pretty tight cylinder that you're not going to have ingredients spilling out of, have a tail hanging out of each side, and it definitely shouldn't be unrolling on itself. Having a nice tight roll like this is what's going to allow us to slice it very nicely while keeping the circular shape. When slicing your sushi roll, do so with a sharp serrated knife, pulling and letting the knife do the work and not pressing down and squishing our roll. A helpful tip is that as you finish slicing through the roll, pull the rest of the roll away from the piece you just cut. Anywhere from 1 to 2 centimeters in thickness is acceptable, and you'll be left with 6 to 10 slices of sushi from each roll. Finish your plating by sprinkling some black sesame seeds on top, drizzling some sriracha mayo. This one is store-bought, but you can also just combine mayo, preferably kewpie mayo and sriracha. Filling a couple of small dishes with soy sauce. If you want a little bit less salt, you can mix some soy sauce and some rice vinegar, and then garnishing with a couple of piles of pickled ginger. Let's take a second to appreciate our hard work and get ready to dig in. I can't wait for you guys to try these. Making sushi was something I was really intimidated by, and then when I tried it, I realized that it actually wasn't as hard as I was making it out to be in my mind. It's also something you can get very creative with, swapping out ingredients or recreating a roll. I mean, they are called Dynamite Rolls. Okay, I'm gonna go crush these in the other room. As always, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. And if you have a suggestion for a future episode, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. See you in the next one.